Today, we're going to dive into the life of a guy named Joseph Champlin. Now, he wasn't a general or president, not by a long shot. But his story, pieced together from old records, it just perfectly captures the birth of America and its incredible transformation. So let's start at the end, okay, with a question that honestly sounds a bit like a riddle. This guy, Joseph Champlin, survived 5 tours of duty in the American Revolution. He faced down British cannons. He even survived a shipwreck. So after all that, how does a guy like that finally meet his end?
The answer is, well, it's almost unbelievable. He was killed by a train. Yeah. At 92 years old, this soldier from the age of muskets died in an accident with this brand new, cutting-edge technology, the steam engine. That one fact right there tells you everything about the 2 completely different worlds his life managed to bridge. To really get how remarkable that is, we've got to go back, way back to the beginning of his adult life, where he really forged his identity, on the battlefield.
You know, his own community gave him a nickname that tells you everything you need to know. They didn't call him Joseph the Farmer or Joseph the Dad. Nope. To them, he was Revolutionary Joseph. His service in the war, it wasn't just a thing he did. It's who he was.
And believe me, he earned that name. This wasn't some one-and-done tour of duty. He answered the call to arms 5 separate times between 1775 and 1780. He was serving these short stints when they needed him, and then a longer 6-month term with the actual Continental Army. For him, the war wasn't just some brief interruption in his life. It was his young life. In his service, it was anything but easy. He was in the thick of it at the Battle of Rhode Island. He was almost killed in a shipwreck. And years later, when he's applying for his pension, he signed the document with an X. Just think about that for a second. That small detail tells us that the man who fought to create a new nation probably couldn't even write his own name. Decades later, his service was finally officially recognized. At 75 years old, the government granted him a pension of $50 a year. Now, I know that doesn't sound like much to us today, but for an aging farmer in the 1830s, this was huge. It was a crucial, hard-won acknowledgement of everything he'd sacrificed. So after the war, Revolutionary Joseph takes on a brand new role, patriarch. He marries Nancy Kenyon, and together they start building a family that would become his other great legacy. And wow, what a family it was. They had 12 children in total. Just listen to this. Their son, Joseph Jr., had 13 kids of his own. Their daughter, Amy, had 14. Their youngest, Alice, had 12. I mean, they weren't just building a family, they were practically populating a town. So the impact was staggering. Just between their 12 kids, Joseph and Nancy had at least 73 grandchildren. Can you imagine? In just 2 generations, their family had absolutely exploded, spreading out across New England and becoming a part of that big westward expansion of the nation. So you might be wondering, how do we know all this stuff? Well, amazingly, we can literally watch their family grow through a really ordinary source, the United States Census. These records are like little snapshots in time, telling the story of the Champlin household decade by decade. So check this out. In 1790, you see this small family just getting started. Then, boom, by 1800, the house is just overflowing with 9 young kids. Fast forward to 1840, Joseph's a widower now, living with another family. And then finally, in 1850, at 92 years old, he's living with his son's family, totally surrounded by grandchildren. You're seeing a whole life cycle captured right there in government data. It's amazing. But, you know, as his life was drawing to a close, the historical records give us one last chapter. And it's a family mystery, hidden right inside his last will and testament. Okay, so a will is supposed to bring closure, right? Settle things. Joseph wrote his in February of 1850, carefully dividing up everything he owned. But instead of giving us answers, his will ended up creating a puzzle that historians, even today, still can't quite solve. The will names most of his living children, but 2 are just gone. They're conspicuously absent: Samuel, his firstborn son, and Alice, his youngest daughter. So this is the big question, the real mystery here. Why would you leave out your eldest son and your youngest daughter? Had they already gotten their inheritance? Was there some big family fight? The documents, they just don't say. They leave us to wonder about all the hidden drama of this 19th century family. And we know this wasn't just some mistake. Court records show there was a mortgage deed between Joseph and Samuel, so there was definitely a financial connection there. After Joseph died, Samuel actually took the case to the Rhode Island Supreme Court to fight the will, and he lost. The court upheld his father's final wishes, and whatever the reason was for the whole dispute, it was buried right along with them.
So, when you put it all together, what does the life of revolutionary Joseph really tell us? Well, it shows us a single human life that spanned one of the most transformative periods in all of human history.
I mean, think about it. He was born a British colonial subject and died a citizen of a huge American republic. He fought a war with muskets and died in a world of steam-powered railroads. The entire world was completely remade in his 92 years on this planet. And that brings us to what I think is the most important takeaway from his story. Joseph Champlin is this powerful reminder that history isn't just about the famous names in our textbooks. It's shaped by countless ordinary people who lived through extraordinary times, people who worked the land, raised families, and built the very foundations of the world we live in today. And that leaves us with one final question to think about. Joseph Champlin's life was documented in census forms, pension applications, a will. So, 170 years from now, whose story, whose data, whose digital footprint is going to be the one that tells the history of our time?